not signed, but you've got committed some guys that you prioritize for a long time, right? Jones, Carson, Dobson. These are the type of guys that South Carolina maybe last month or in May or in the spring had missed on some. And so the vibes are better. I think the other thing to remember here, Terry, is that, South Carolina's played the long game with some prospect. They're not going to just fill up the class just to say it's full in July or June. They've got some guys who've gone to other schools. Fred Ards from Orlando, Florida, the big-time edge who committed to A&M. Trey Segarra, the four-star running back in-state for Burns who committed to LSU, and others that they have continued recruiting and will continue to recruit. And there are some signs that there may be some flip opportunities for South Carolina this season if they can put together the type of season they feel like that they can in 2026.
Chris Clark hanging out with us, Gamecock Central, talking about a big weekend of recruiting for South Carolina. 4 signings in 4 days. Okay, Dobson's the 5-star, and there was some stuff there a little bit about him committing. Did he really commit? And then Dobson kind of went out on social media and said, yes, I'm committing 100% to South Carolina. All right, the teams to keep an eye on who might try to flip Dobson before he actually signs his letter, who would they be that we got to keep an eyeball on?
Well, the finalists technically were Auburn, Michigan, and Texas A&M, in addition to, of course, South Carolina. A&M had legitimate buzz at one point in this recruitment. Michigan, I think, ended up being the biggest competition to South Carolina at the end of the day. So, I don't think in this era there's any doubt for a prospect of Josh Dobson's caliber. Yeah, some schools are going to continue recruiting him. That's obvious. If he had committed to Michigan on July 1st, we would be sitting here saying, hey, that's a bummer. South Carolina's going to continue recruiting him. Let's see what happens, right? I do think some of that was a little bit misconstrued. I'd also think, and Wes made this point during our show earlier today, Terry, like prospects are just being a little bit more upfront about some of this stuff nowadays, and that, hey, schools are going to continue recruiting me. I don't sign until December. But he did, as you said, go back and clarify that, kind of talking a little bit more about the timeline. Like, the process is not absolutely over unless Josh Dobson, turns his phone off and goes into hiding. Some other schools are going to contact him. That's just part of it, And so that said, I think, look, he felt good enough about it to go ahead and when I say signed up for, of course, not literally, but he went ahead and signed up to put his name on the commitment list, despite some of these questions that other prospects have had. And so if you're South Carolina, you feel really good about that. Those relationships, they were always kind of the school for him. And there was always a kind of a rotating cast of other schools, Tennessee or A&M or Michigan or LSU at one point, who kind of rose to challenge South Carolina, or maybe even took the lead at some points. But those relationships and the comfort level he had with the program, the job that South Carolina did recruiting him, won out. So, yeah, is there still work to be done? I mean, absolutely. But that's really the case with anybody. It's always going to be the case with somebody like Josh Dobson. And if he had committed to one of those other schools, they would have work to do as well to hang on to him. So you'd rather have him on your commitment list than not, that's for sure.
Chris Clark from Gamecock Central hanging out with us here on the postgame show, talking some Carolina football recruiting over the weekend. All right, so Dobson obviously is a 5-star. Let's set him aside. Out of Davion Jones and Nate Carson and Jaden Brody, which of these other 3 should we be talking about more?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'd start by saying, South Carolina happy to get all those guys. I would pick Jones for this reason. I think when you look at the offensive line and a high school offensive lineman like Nate Carson, it's a harder position to come in and play as a freshman. I think there's a lot to like. Athletically, he's versatile. He's got athleticism, plays to the whistle, plays for a really good high school program. Like there is a lot to like about Nate Carson. There's a lot to like about Jaden Brody as a guy who doesn't have elite size, 6'2", 6'3", 230, 235. But, kind of reminds me maybe a Brian Thomas Jr. type player at that level who could end up being a really good player. Is he a freshman instant impact year one? Maybe not. When I look at Davion Jones, I think he's been maybe a little bit undersold from a ranking standpoint. He doesn't fit the Torian Gray, like 6'2" and up, super long corner. He's 5'10", 5'11", but what he does have is really good speed. He's 10.7 in the 100 meters. He's versatile. Carolina thinks he could play any position at the college level. He's played safety throughout his high school career, but he's going to be a corner or nickel this year at Huff. And he could end up being a corner or nickel at South Carolina. I'm very intrigued by him as a nickel, and had a really good offer list. I mean, you look at the schools he visited. Indiana, they've been doing pretty well, recently.
Okay.
LSU, Georgia, he's had a lot of big time programs after him, and South Carolina's prioritized him for a long time. So, you look at Torian Gray, his track record for development. He's also been very good at getting guys on the field early, and Carolina could have some losses from their defensive back room after the 2026 season. So out of those other three guys, I may circle him as somebody who may have a chance to play early in Columbia.
Now, hold on for a minute. You popped the 10.7 100 in high school, right?
No, at 10.7, maybe in the 60. I could run that. That was not my event. I was an 800 guy, and I was not at the upper echelon of whatever the times were being run back then.
All right, man. Real quick, where does South Carolina go from here? Who's some of the names we need to have on our radar as the recruiting continues for 2027?
So right now, Terry, I mean, it's going to slow down a little bit, to be honest with you. And part of that's just the calendar, right?
Mm-hmm.
No camps, no visits for prospects. There's no off-campus visits for coaches. This is really maybe the only month in college football where there's not a lot going on. And fortunately, for us, for fans, there was a flurry of activity after, the thing went dead, the calendar went dead in July, where there were some prospects ready to decide. So it'll slow down from a recruiting standpoint. Right now, it's kind of, obviously, there'll be remote communications and all that, but we'll get visits restarted in August. Right now, it's kind of resetting the board, seeing where things stand, for the staff, continuing to build those relationships, work on some of those flips, put in some of that work before the season. But from a recruiting standpoint, things are going to slow down now. And for South Carolina, look, I mentioned earlier, they got 17 commitments from the high school ranks in this class. You're not going to go a whole lot higher than that. At this point, they're going to be very selective with their remaining spots. They've got some positions where they're probably done or are done, and some others where, hey, you might add a guy or two here and there, but they're going to be very selective. A lot of the guys left on the board are potential flip candidates that we're going to be monitoring, but that's a little bit down the road, and we'll have to see how this season plays out.
A man who once ran a 10.7 800, Chris Clark, Gamecock Central.
10.7 800 would be absolutely mind-boggling.
Ridiculous. I could even do a 10.7 40. I mean, God, that would be insane. Man, I always appreciate you hopping in and giving us a little info on the recruiting, man. We'll talk. We'll see you tomorrow, maybe at 11 or 10.
Yeah, well, I'll see you there. Yeah, I'll be actually at 10. Garnet Trust Hour.
I appreciate you, my friend. Thanks.
Thanks.
Chris Clark, Gamecock Central, also Garnet Trust Hour here on the Game and the Game Network. We will pop back. Also, a big weekend in the transfer portal for Gamecock baseball. We'll hit that next here on the post-game show, right here on the Game Network, at the Game TV Radio on YouTube. Coming up in just a little bit after 4, Phil Steele, the godfather of the college football yearbook, was on this morning on the early game with Elijah and Preston and Jalen. We'll re-rack a couple cuts from Phil, then we'll play the full interview in the 5 o'clock hour. Phil Steele talked a lot about South Carolina, yipped about the SEC a little bit. So we will get you some Phil Steele on starting in the 4 o'clock hour. Also, we'll revisit some of Jeremiah Donati's comments last week when the Nike drop happened. And, I wasn't here. Let's re-rack a couple cuts and discuss the Nike thing. And also just Jeremiah Donati in general at this point as an athletic director. So we'll get into that, too, after 4 o'clock. All right, so South Carolina, we just heard from Chris Clark from Gamecock Central about, Dobson and Jones and Carson and Brody, the South Carolina football high school commits, the verbals here in the last few days. Gamecock baseball, I guess because, we've been on a long weekend, it's kind of, I'm not saying got buried, but maybe it was in a slower lane after the flurry of high school football commits to South Carolina. Connor Schaus, this is a really nice get by Kevin Schnall and his staff. Schaus last year at Texas Tech. He was a position player, utility guy, also pitched a little bit in relief. 54 games total as a position player, 11 appearances on the mound. Schaus hit 353, 10 homers, drove in 66, scored over 50 runs, 6 for 6 in stolen bases. An offensive weapon, again, 10 home runs, not going to lead the league in homers, but still 30 extra base hits. Batted in the 3 spot in Lubbock. And if you look at his 66 runs batted in and 52 runs scored, easily would have led South Carolina in both those categories. Schaus, a draft-eligible sophomore. We'll see what happens there. But Schaus does have multiple years of eligibility left if he ends up going that route. This is a really, really nice pickup by South Carolina. So many different websites rate these transfer portal guys. According to 6-4 Analytics rankings, Schaus is the top player available in the portal. So again, nice move, nice work by Kevin Schnall and his staff, snagging Schaus. Also, another little piece of intel. We talked about South Carolina picking up J.D. Stein, the shortstop from Wake. Offensively, much better in conference play. Still a work in progress offensively. Walked a good amount through the season. Defensively, some inconsistency there, but obviously, again, a high ceiling there as well. So, again, a developmental shortstop, years of eligibility left. Well, Stein will be part of USA Baseball, their collegiate national team, and this month's World Championships in Taiwan. Stein made the 28-man roster. So there's some good news. We're going to see how all these pieces fit once South Carolina finishes up their portal shopping. They're not far from getting this done now at this point. The roster is very interesting. Ex-Coastal players that played for Coach Schnall. Wake Forest guys who are coming over as well because they know the hitting instructor. This roster, again, you've got guys coming from winning programs. On base percentage obviously matters. So once the dust settles, we'll start maybe giving an idea of where this whole thing could fit. But it feels like South Carolina did some really nice work in the portal. We'll see where all that goes. And by the way, in case you missed it, on July 2nd, Will Whelan also committed to South Carolina. Wheeling on the season threw a career high 74 and two-thirds innings, 84 strikeouts. His control got better as last year compared to the year before. I mean, a guy throws in the low 90s with a slider. Obviously, a guy who's going to be, he's not blowing it by you to get strikeouts. He's doing it in multiple ways, whether it's spin rate, location, deception. But Wheelan also committed to South Carolina. Career ERA 6.38, which you go, ugh. But again, got better last year. Doesn't give a lot of extra base hits. Not a lot of hard contact against him. So long as the location is good, he gets strikeouts, doesn't give up a lot of extra base hits. Hopefully that big ERA, his career ERA, will come down after a good 2027 for South Carolina. So just, again, Gamecocks almost finished with the portal, it feels like. But some good work by Kevin Schnall and his staff. Obviously, you're getting the operational budget to go improve your team. You've built a big coaching staff. We'll get to more of that in the Gamecock Notebook at 5:15. But the baseball program, look, I've said this and will continue just for me. Make it back to the postseason. If you do that, that's a huge thumbs up for 2027. After what we saw in 2025 and 2026, which made your eyes burn, just getting back to tournament baseball, I think, is a huge win in year one for Coach Schnall and his crew. And, I mean, look, again, you have your own expectation. Now, eventually, you want to get back to the expectations that this program has. That's, getting to Omaha. But baby steps. You can't get to Omaha if you don't get to the postseason first. That's what somebody told me yesterday. I know, crazy idea. So I think if you get to the NCAA tournament next year, that's a win, no matter what you do in the dance. But a lot of really good work by Coach Schnall and his staff mining the portal. All right, post-game show, Terry Ford, appreciate you hanging out. There's a soccer game I heard about that I think is happening tonight. There's some pretty good soccer yesterday, too. So we'll dip into that. And a very controversial decision depending on who you root for. We'll get all that stuff next here on the post-game show. Terry Ford, appreciate you hanging out with us here on the Game Network at the Game TV Radio on YouTube.
I just found out on the way over here just from the guys. Obviously, for us, it gives us a boost. We're really excited. He's been so good for us this tournament, so to have him for tomorrow is obviously really exciting for us.
How does it change things on the field for you when he's out there with you?
Well, I mean, obviously we played with him all tournament, so I mean, it changes as far as like just having him as a presence out there. He does so much. He runs off the ball. He always gives an option. He's constantly a threat and behind and to score, and obviously as a team, it's really helpful.
That's Christian Pulisic from the USA men's soccer team. Talking about getting Falar and Belugan back, the suspension, the suspended red card, where basically Belugan had a red card, was given after video review, which meant Belugan would not play tonight against Belgium. Supposedly, the president made a phone call to FIFA to look into this situation, and then FIFA did something unprecedented for this time of a tournament, and that was suspend the red card. Basically, that means Belugan can play. Now, FIFA has ruled a request from the Belgian football folks for an explanation about the suspended red card, and FIFA ruled the request inadmissible, meaning it has no grounds to appeal the decision. So Belugan will play tonight. Again, if you're a fan of the American soccer team, you're like, yeah, baby. And yeah, we all want to see the U.S. win, and when you get this kind of ruling, you go, hey, I don't care if it's right or wrong. I'm just happy it went our way. Because if we flip this and we're doing Belgian sports talk, we're mad. Like, this is crap. The host country with political pressure and God knows what else they had to do to get FIFA to do this is wrong. It's corrupt. And I understand folks in Belgium thinking that way. Just like I understand folks in America going, the red card was a BS call anyway. We're just fixing a bad call. And plus, it benefits us. So we're okay with it. That's the thing, right? If you get the controversial call your way, either to you, that's the right call, not controversial, or B, you go, yeah, you know what? It sucks, but hey, sucks to be the other guys. The call went our way. I mean, like you go back to the Saints and the Rams, that controversial no call in the NFC Championship game for pass interference. I mean, look, if you're a Rams fan and you're sober and you try to be a little bit objective, you're going to go, hey, really got away with one there, hey? But you go like this, hey, we'll take it. Or you always say this too, you know what, we've been screwed so many times, about time we got something our way. Because that's how we do all this, right? When it goes your way. When it goes against you, obviously you're mad, angry, everything's fixed, FIFA's corrupt, whatever the case. But this time, we in the U.S. got one of these our way. And now, which is really good for the United States, because Belugan can play. 3 goals so far in the World Cup? And the way he affects the game on both ends of the pitch. See how I said pitch? Look at me. Look at me like I know soccer. So it's a win for the United States. Now, again, if you're Belgium, you have every right to be annoyed because this is this deep in the tournament. This is precedent setting. And look, you could sit around and go, yeah, we want to. Well, that's okay. We're happy that they've got their best. We want to beat them with their best. No, you had a chance to play the United States without their best. You'll take that if you want to be truthful. So it just depends on your lens, right? Depends on who you're rooting for, which side you're on. Everybody can twist and turn all the narratives however they want to for their own self, right? Sure. But, what does this mean? I mean, again, you know me, I'm not a soccer guy. The only soccer games I've been to in my life are the ones my kids played in. 3 of my kids played soccer. just to make me miserable. But from what I know from people who know soccer, Belgium an older team, the U.S. younger. Some of Belgium's best players are guys who beat the U.S. in 2014. Do the math. It's a long time ago. So the United States younger, more athletic. We'll see how much of an advantage that could be. The game is looked at as pretty much even by the wagerers. But the U.S. has a really great chance to get to the quarters for the first time. Was it 2002? Basically a long time. So, again, Belgium, could Belgium win? Sure, of course. But the United States has a real opportunity here. And, you get Belugan on the pitch. I said pitch again. It only helps you, obviously. So it's going to be interesting tonight, see what happens, see where it goes. As the United States and Belgium go at it for a shot to get to the Elite Eight, so to speak. And, of course, last night, before we get to that, we played Christian Pulisic's thoughts on Flo coming back for the United States. There's always a flip side. And here's the flip side. The Belgian head coach, Rudy Garcia, about the Belugan news.
As I said to your colleague during the individual interviews, I didn't know that FIFA World Cup, the 5th of July is now 1st April, and that it's April's Fool's then. It is new news to me. Going back to the Belgian statement that they have released, a lot of our thoughts and opinions are in the release. We're not defending the national team or the federation. We are defending football, whether it's ethic or integrity.
I mean, look, I totally understand why the folks in Belgium feel that way. I'd feel that way too if I were them. If this was reversed, we here in the United States would feel that way. This morning, Elijah and Preston played a great clip. They didn't say where it was from, but this pretty much sums it all up about this topic.
Corruption is not bad. Corruption is only bad if I'm not involved.
Yes.
But if I'm part of that corruption, I'll defend it.
Right. If the corruption benefits you, you're all in. If it doesn't, it's dirty and awful and illegal and it's corruption and it's vile. But when it's on your side, I will defend it. It's human nature. Also last night, Mexico, I won't lie to you. I was driving back here late last night, and I was listening to this game on my Sirius XM. I've never listened to a soccer game before in my life. It's quite interesting. And, England held on. And one thing about when you're not, into any sport, and then you kind of like eavesdrop in for big events. Like we'll watch the Olympics and for some reason we get into the Winter Games and we're like, man, I tell you what, I like that curling. I don't know what the hell it is, but that's fun to watch. We don't understand the lingo, the rules, but we're just into watching it, right? And that's kind of what we're doing with the World Cup. It's in America. And sometimes you listen to a soccer analyst talk, and if you are into soccer and watch it, whether it's English Premier League or whatever, you get what they're saying and why they're saying it the way they are. But if you're not, you're like, what exactly did that mean? That happened last night. One of the commentators on ESPN, who had played for America, I think played for Germany as well, was talking about the Mexico-England game, and he goes, they asked him about his thoughts on the England victory in Mexico, and he's like, well, I was pretty impressed how the English tried so hard. And you're like, what? Well, it's the World Cup there, man. You figure they would be trying hard. But as I listened to him talk about it, I think what he was saying, and again, if you're into soccer, you would people probably nod their head who are into soccer, going, "Yeah, man, I agree with you. Where you're coming from." I guess he's saying because England gutted that out. That was it. That was one of those wins that you get just because he just kept trying and kept going and kept fighting, and it was just like you had 10 men on the field. Mexico just kept attacking, and you were just holding on for dear life. You're tired, you're beat, you're in 7 billion feet of altitude. That place, Azteca in Mexico, is insane. And you're dealing with all that, and you just held on for dear life by your fingernails and won the game. So I guess that's what the analyst meant when he said, I was impressed how England tried so hard. Coming from here as a guy that doesn't watch soccer but watches, football and baseball and basketball and whatever, hockey, I'm like, yeah, kind of that's what you should be doing in a humongous game, is trying. But I get what he was saying the more I listened to him. When he first said it, he goes, I was just really impressed how England tried. They typically don't. Okay, maybe that's why they haven't won a World Cup in 60 years or whatever it is. But it was impressive. It was one of those just, you gutted it out, is what England did. Against a lot of odds that were going against them, and they end up, I think it was the third or fourth team in 90 matches to win in Mexico at that stadium. And from what I understand, England, again, they have underachieved for years. They have at times been looked at as not the most mentally tough crew in the world, or a team that couldn't gut out a victory like last night. So a lot of the folks that root for the England side are going, maybe this year. We got some guys with some intestines. We'll see where we go. I will pop back in here on the post-game show. Terry Ford, appreciate you hanging out. As we go up until 6, a disgusting event happened yesterday or over the weekend. We'll get to it next. Okay, so over the weekend, there's always July 4th weekend at Coney Island. Joey Chestnut wolfed down 66 hot dogs and buns in 10 minutes. Won his 18th mustard belt. Beat his closest competitor, Patrick Bertoletti, by 15 hot dogs. In 92-degree heat, high humidity, Chestnut popped a hot dog in a bun every 9 seconds. Sounded something like this.
Nathan's famous 4th of July hot dog eating contest presented by Polymark. And this is the 18-time champion of the world with 66 Nathan's famous hot dogs and buns in 10 minutes. Joey Chestnut!
Ick. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Look, I've been around a lot of disgusting things. I've done disgusting things I can't talk about, of course, because the court documents are sealed. Or thank God there was no smartphones with video capability back in the old days. So I'm not sitting here as some prude. But just something about a hot dog eating contest, just I can't watch it. Can't do it. I mean, if you can, that's fine. That's great. I have buddies of mine who look forward to it. I have buddies of mine who try to get me to come over to their house and then turn it on so I would watch it because I knew that I can't do it. Watching someone stuff their face to the point of barfing just does, I don't know, call me crazy, just not my bag. Not my thing. Just isn't. No thanks. But look, I give that guy props. Old Joey, 18 of those things in 20 years, I think, or something stupid like that. And you make money. You do. Joey Chestnut net worth. Let's see what old Joey has made. His estimated worth, okay, ready for this? Through competitive eating and high-profile sponsors, because there are people who want to sponsor a man who can stick 66 hot dogs and buns in his pie hole. To do that, and to be as successful as Joey Chestnut has been, his net worth, you sitting down for this? Pull the car over to the side of the road. $3.5 million. Yeah. For eating. Yeah. Winning Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest popped Joey Chestnut another 10 grand. So between the career winning by stuffing your pie hole and the sponsorships you get for people sponsoring you to stuff your pie hole, Joey Chestnut's made a pretty good living. So hey, I am not going to give a guy any grief. If you can be worth $3.5 million, what do you do for a living? Eat. What? I eat. I got no issue with that guy. I just can't watch it. I just can't. But I wonder what he's like when he just sits down and eats for just normal, like at Thanksgiving. You know, Joey just ate 14 pieces of pie in like a minute and a half. I wonder how he eats when he's not competing. Just wondering. But yeah, that happened over the weekend, July 4th. Joey Chestnut. 66 hot dogs. I think the most I've ever, like when I was younger, I love pizza. I could when I was younger, I could put away food. My metabolism just stupid when I was 12, 13, 14. I think one time I ate like, 12 pieces of pizza? My buddies and I did a who could eat the most pizza at the pizza buffet competition. It was a place called Pizza Inn. I don't know if you had Pizza Inns here. But it was at a Pizza Inn in Richmond, Virginia. I was in 6th grade. Had like 12 pieces. I was second. It was like 6 of us. A buddy of mine ate 14 pieces. And from what his dad said, that didn't end well when he got home later. Congrats, Joey Chestnut, on your $3.5 million in net worth. All right, Phil Steele. Phil Steele yearbook, the College Football Bible, on the early game this morning with Elijah Preston and Jalen. We'll get you a couple cuts from Phil. That's coming up next. He talks a lot about Carolina. It's on the postgame show on the game. All right, kicking hour 2 of the postgame show. Terry Ford rolling it solo. Jay at the beach for the week. He will be back on Monday. I got to hang in New York City. Well, I was telling folks here at this radio convention, but really I was hanging out with Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift. You might have heard of him. Yeah. I was on that short list. Yeah. I was short list of guys who got tased who actually walked by Madison Square Garden. It was funny. I am so oblivious about life now. I am. My family will say something about something in pop culture or something in the news. I'm like, they'll say, you heard about that, right? No. What the hell happened? They'll look at me like, what do you do? What are you doing? I go, look, if it's not on ESPN, I don't know where it's from anymore. I don't know anything. I become like one of those head coaches who doesn't know who the president is. It's kind of sad and pathetic, but that's my life. And so I didn't realize the Travis Kelce Taylor Swift wedding was happening this past weekend until I got to New York City. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. A little bit of a buzz in NYC about it. A little bit. I saw, I guess, I forgot where I was reading. They printed some of the, like, celebrity guests. And I noticed, obviously, Patrick Mahomes was invited. Yeah, Kelsey said, you just can't bring your goofy family, Patrick. Matthew Stafford was also invited, quarterback of the Rams. Andy Reid, the head coach of the Chiefs, because you got to suck up if you're Kelsey. But I didn't see any other Kansas City Chiefs. Maybe there were. They just weren't printed on this list. It was interesting. So anyway, yep. I was in New York and kind of ran into that. And I was like, oh, geez, that's this weekend. That's right. I got to start. I got to start paying attention to life. I think, really do. All right. So Phil Steele was on the early game. Matter of fact, Phil just started his radio tour and began it with our little radio station here in Columbia, South Carolina. And Phil went in depth talking about his thoughts on South Carolina for 2026.
Yeah, and this year I am bullish on South Carolina. I've put them on my most improved list. 2 years ago, South Carolina was coming off a 5-7 season. I put them on my most improved list. They got to 9-4. Now, last year, South Carolina fans weren't too happy for me, or with me, I should say. I picked them low. They were considered a national title playoff contender, and I had them 10th in the SEC. But a lot of that was due to the defense. And, I thought they lost too much from the defensive front seven last year. And even with that, you go back to the Alabama game. They led that thing 22-14, 10 minutes to go. They had a shot to win that. A&M up 30-3 at the half. Sorry to open up some wounds there, guys. But I think they're going to be improved, especially at that linebacker position. That's probably one of the more experienced units, probably the strength of the team this year. And then offensively, you got Lenore Sellers back. Remember, he got injured against Vanderbilt. Took a few games to get back. I think he's going to have the type of year more towards what he was playing at the end of 2024. And then let's look at the offensive line as well. Back in 24, they didn't have any injuries on the offensive line. They had one start missed all year. Last year, the injuries cropped up. They fired their OL coach mid-year. They dropped to 111 yards per game rush, allowed 43 sacks. I think if you look at the offensive line this year, they added 7 offensive linemen that were full-time starters. And really, when you add transfers, you want to add guys with experience. So I'm looking for a stock market bounce from that offensive line, a more improved run game, Lenore Sellers back to form, and a defense which was decent last year, but I think they're going to be better this year, especially at the linebacker core, the strength of the team. So add it all up, I'm much more bullish on South Carolina this year than I was last year.
Yeah, so Phil having South Carolina as one of his surprise teams. Now, Phil's hit rate on surprise teams, like 70-75% or something like that. So he doesn't get them all right, but he gets most of them. And, Phil talks about it. We dig into the offense so much because really watching last year, it doesn't take a genius to go, but I tell you what, if that offense just would have been bad, team would have won 7 games. And Phil does talk about the offensive line, and yeah, it was a mess. Like, that's why you had two offensive line coaches last year, and you got a new offensive line coach this year in Randy Clements. So, yeah, the offensive line to me, it was my key going into last year. It was my biggest concern. Unfortunately, it became more than a concern. It became a disaster. This year, again, it's the key to the whole thing. I think the defense will be good. I think the special teams will be at least solid. And if the offense can be just okay, you can see this team winning 7 as a floor. No, look, it's the SEC. Your schedule's challenging every year. That's life. But I believe the talent on this football team, if the offensive line is they just hold their own. Just hold your own. No one's asking you to win awards. Just hold your own. How about block somebody this year? If the offensive line can do that, I think this is a successful football team. I do think it's interesting that Phil goes to the defensive side of the ball, talking about a couple things. And yes, last year you lost Kyle Kennard, you had lost Demetrius Knight, you had lost some defensive tackles like a TJ Sanders, a Boogie Huntley. And yes, you lost Debo. Pretty much you lost a lot of your front 7. You did bring back Dylan Stewart, and then you brought back a bunch of question marks. Your secondary it should be solid, but, in front of your secondary, there's a bunch of, maybe. High ceiling, potential. This year, your linebackers all come back, and they all, in one way, shape, or form, seem to get better. Yeah, our guy Fred Johnson was better early, kind of struggled a bit as the year went on, but you saw the potential. Murphy got better as the year progressed. J.O. got better as the year progressed. So you see these 3 guys with all this potential and high ceiling and speed and playmaking ability and sideline to sideline range and all that stuff. Now with a year of experience under their belts, you would think this linebacking core could be really special. You have multiple players on the other side of the edge of Dylan Stewart that if they can make teams pay when Stewart gets doubled and tripled and chipped and held and, physically, criminally assaulted, then that's going to be big, right? It's just going to be big. Defensively, it's very interesting this year. Vakari Swain could have a breakout season. You've got others coming back in the secondary from last year. You got to have a couple guys, got to be next man up. But the defense, you feel like you've got a good core defensively. Brownlow Dindy at, interior defensive lineman. If Brownlow Dindy can stay healthy, I think he will have himself a year. You have a nice depth of defensive tackles and nose tackles you can rotate. So the defense, you feel good with the pieces you have. It just comes back to the offense. It just does. Can the offensive line hold their own? Because maybe it's me, but I have so much faith in Kendall Briles to put together an explosive offense if this offensive line can just be okay. I think Lenore Sellers, under the tutelage of a real offensive coordinator who has built game plans for quarterbacks like Lenore Sellers, I think Kendall Briles is going to do a heck of a job with Lenore's, but it all comes back to, can the offensive line just at least be fine? Be okay. You got a lot of experience. You do. Bunch of veterans coming in from the portal who have started. You hope that can lead to quicker cohesion, because sometimes when you add conceivably 4 starters out of the portal, we've seen it go both ways, right? We've seen teams have great success and teams have it fall apart on them. But the one hope you have is that with all this experience, these guys can get the cohesion together quick. And if they are healthy, Chikari's peak, if they are healthy, then hopefully we'll see a much improved offensive line. Another metric Phil Steele talks about is close games, winning close games, losing close games. Here's Phil Steele talking about that regarding the Gamecocks.
Next.
Yeah, and the metric articles I started in the magazine back in 1995, the first one was turnovers equals turnaround, which was double-digit turnovers. If you benefit from them one year, you're going to go weaker record the next year, and vice versa if you had negative double-digit turnovers. And so after that, a few years later, I started the close wins, close losses one, and it really is true to form. And if you take a look at those games, if you lose a game by, a point or 3 points or anything less than a touchdown, you're looking at the fact that you're basically one play away from actually winning the game as opposed to losing the game. So you're much better than your record, and it generally shows. So I did all the metrics and have been doing it for years, and once again, it comes up about 75%. If you lose a lot of close games one year, the next year you get that improvement. Of course, keeping Lenore Sellers healthy is a big plus, keeping the offensive line healthy, and I think if the offensive line's healthy at the end of the year, that helps you win those games. It helps you run the football at the end of the game, control the clock if you're ahead late in the game. Also, in the red zone, it helps you out. So I think the improvement for South Carolina and the offensive line, linebacking core, and quarterback are probably the three main areas that will help you win those close games.
Yeah, look, 2 years ago, South Carolina won those close games, right? Mm-hmm. Remember the comeback against Missouri, for an example. Last year, South Carolina found a way to lose close games. Blowed leads, Texas A&M, Alabama. When you had chances in one-score games early in the year like Missouri, in Columbia, Missouri, you couldn't get over the hump and get anything going on offense. It was just, again, it was one of those years where you couldn't make the plays to win the close games, and you couldn't hold leads. You have a terrible penalty at the worst possible time, a turnover at the worst possible time. Head-scratching calls like late in the LSU game. Why are you throwing the football in the direction of a future NFL corner on fourth down? Don't know. But it was just that kind of a year. A lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda, a lot of but this, but that, but this, if that, and all that stuff. 2 years ago, you didn't have that because you won those games. The Clemson game in Death Valley, for an example. Just, that's the thing. A lot of people will talk about turnover margin and winning close games as a year-to-year thing. It's a metric and component you can't count on every year. You just try to put your guys in the best position to be successful in those two metrics, but you can't count on them. It's like relief pitchers in baseball. One year, a guy could have a 1-run ERA. The next year, you have a 101-run ERA. You just can't count on it from year to year. But last year, South Carolina struggled in those close games. This year, if your offensive line is better, you keep your quarterback upright so you can go make plays. You build your offense around the strength of your quarterback. Maybe your quarterback can make magical plays again like he did 2 years ago. Maybe you can run the ball better. That way you can hold the ball and win a close game instead of 3 and out and giving the other team the ball with a chance to go down the field and beat you. So we shall see. But talent-wise, you got to feel good about where South Carolina is. We'll get some more Phil Steele for you before we pop out here. We want to switch gears, though. Jeremiah Donati was on with Jay, I believe was last Wednesday, the day the Nike drop. We want to get into that because I wasn't here. I was running around with Travis and Taylor in New York City. Just a couple of cuts from Jeremiah Donati and some thoughts on the switch to Nike and just Jeremiah Donati in general, what he's done since he's been here. That's next. Post-game show, Terry Ford. Thanks for hanging out as we just keep rolling along up until 6 here on the Game Network, and at the Game TV Radio on YouTube. So South Carolina last week makes it official. They move on to Nike, leaving Under Armour, which you had to. Like, just not trying to be mean. Look, Under Armour's from my burg in Maryland. And, when South Carolina first, hit in with Under Armour, they weren't the only school. Under Armour looked, cool and hip and might be able to be some kind of competitor to Nike in some way, shape, or form. You're jumping on proactively. You gave it a whirl. And then as time went on, you realized, oh, my God, we got to get out of this. Because like I've said this, look, again, that Under Armour shirt, that breathable thing in the beginning was fantastic. But what Under Armour did after that was very underwhelming, especially the shoes. They were just terrible. I mean, not to be mean. I mean, I had a pair. I got a pair for, Christmas, 10 years ago or something. They were awful. There was a lot of complaints about the shoe wear, the footwear. So it just became a deal that you wanted to get out of as soon as you could. And when you finally could, you go to Nike, and that's where you need to be. You just do. Nike is Nike, and, you tried to go a different direction, and if Under Armour could have popped, you were right there, but they didn't. So you had to step forward and jump back on, with the big dog. Jeremiah Donati, again, was on with Jay, talked about the Nike move, and I guess the first thing to play here is why go to Nike now if you're South Carolina?
It's a great question. So, when I first got here in January or about 18 months ago, one of the things that was obvious is that we have an awesome brand. We've got a great national brand. There's a tremendous amount of pride with that brand, but also felt like there was also some untapped potential with the brand. And so one of the things that we set out to do early on was to find ways and find partners that could help us elevate and amplify that brand. And, just as luck would have it, our apparel deal was coming to an end. And so we were going to be in discussions about whether to extend or whether to seek a new partner. And look, Nike is the best in the business. They're the number one apparel company in the world for a reason. It's not just because of the gear and the equipment. It's because of their vision. It's because of their marketing platform. It's because of the engine, if you will, that has driven that for so many years. And so that was, when you talk to them and you hear that vision, that really aligned with what we were trying to do here in South Carolina. And so, I've had experience working with Nike. I've seen what they can do for schools and for brands and for individual athletes. And so, that was probably really what put it over the top. And so, it wasn't necessarily what Under Armour wasn't. Under Armour was a great partner, but we just felt like for right now, this was the best step for us.
Yeah, it just was. And you hear with Donati, look, I've seen what Nike does. Obviously, they're the big dog. We got to get back with the big dog. And Jeremiah Donati's right. It's what Nike brings you along with, being a Nike school. So what I like about it, and we'll get to more of this in a second, is the proactiveness of Jeremiah Donati. He recognizes where they need to go when he goes. Boom, done. Let's hear the other, because look, we're all about NIL now. That's just the reality of the world. And what can Nike bring you or help you with NIL opportunities?
It's definitely a big piece of it. When you can't have any conversation these days about college athletics without NIL and player compensation coming into the conversation. So, we wanted. One of the things that's really attractive about Nike, and you just touched on that, was how they amplify student athletes, players, athletes, professional athletes, and how they tell their stories. Nike's the best storyteller there is. And so, we were really excited about that for our teams, but we were also really excited about that for the individuals that will be, quote unquote, Nike athletes. And so you've seen we've already released the 5 blue ribbon athletes, and we're really excited that all those kids were, first of all, they made so much sense for us and so much sense for Nike. When you talk about Chloe and Joyce and Dylan and Nick and, of course, Lenoris. But there will be others. There'll be others, too, coming soon and coming behind them. But, what they've already they've done. I mean, if you've seen those, if you've seen some of the content they've already put out on social, I mean, that's what they do. They help elevate those platforms. That's really important to our athletes. Some more than others, but it's just an important thing across the college athletics landscape. And so you want to make sure that you're armed with the right partners to support that.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's remember when this whole deal popped, we were just digging around trying to find stuff, and Nike will, I mean, they're not going to give you money for everybody, but they will give you money for certain athletes that they target and they believe will be good brand ambassadors, or they are high-profile athletes in your programs. And, we look at football with Lenoris and Dylan and Nick and, Nick Harbor, Dylan Stewart, Lenore Sellers. And you sit and you go, okay, that's great, because whatever Nike adds to the already built-in NIL pot for those players helps you keep those players. I don't think Lenore Sellers is going anywhere, no. But remember, Nick Harbor and Dylan Stewart are DMV kids. They didn't grow up in South Carolina like, Lenoris. Was Lenoris, I mean, remember, the story, he wasn't like a hardcore Gamecock fan, but he is from right down the road in Florence. So he has a regional, local, state pull. Harbor and Stewart don't. No one's saying they were going to leave if they didn't get the money they wanted, but just the point being is, if Nike can give them love and make them special blue ribbon type athletes and help compensate them financially to go with what you're already doing, that's a win for you. You get to they help you keep your high level guys. And that's obviously massively important to your program. Just is. All right, we'll get some more Jeremiah Donati in the next segment. We're going to play another cut about just the potential of Nike and South Carolina. But also I want to take a step further, and Jeremiah Donati's 18 months here. Let's get some thoughts on just the job. Again, it's early on. Donati's hired one coach, so it's not like he's had to flip over coaching staffs, but what has he done in a short time here? I think it's been pretty impressive myself. We'll get into that coming up next. Also, now look, so the folks at Crescent Construction, our fantastic partner for the Grand Slam contest. So the deal was there's a X amount of money involved in the Grand Slam contest. South Carolina had 2 Grand Slams during the season. Then after the year was over, we found out, oh my God, there's like $325 left to give away. So the folks at Crescent Construction got with us and said, how about a Grand Slam coaching hire in honor of Kevin Schnall being hired as the new baseball coach? Like, great idea, let's do it. So you can go to 1075thegame.com. We fixed the little glitches in the contest on the website, by the way. You can go there, just like you entered the Grand Slam contest. Click on there, get your name in, and we are going to do that drawing the Friday before SEC Media Days. That would be the 17th, I think. So get in, get your name in there. We're going to draw our last $325 from our buds at Crescent Construction. Come back, Jeremiah Donati. We'll get a cut about the untapped potential that Nike can help South Carolina with, and the job that the new athletic director has done in a year and a half. That's next here on the postgame show. Terry Ford, appreciate you hanging on the Game Network, at the Game TV Radio on YouTube. We yip about the men's clinic here a lot. Why? Well, because if you're a guy and, you're getting older and it just ain't happening, man. You don't feel right. And you got stuff going on that's never happened before, whether it's your sleep, whether it's your workouts, your recovery from workouts, your passion, so to speak, for life in any different situation, lack of sleep, memory, whatever it is. Go talk to the folks at the men's clinic, see if they can help you. 803-875-MENS. The consultation is free. You sit down with Dr. Dan and the staff, you tell them your story. They'll do a testosterone test on you, and then they'll sit down and come up with a plan specifically designed for you, to get you back to being you again. You got nothing to lose. It's free. Make that call, 803-875-MENS. Go see the folks at the men's clinic of South Carolina. Okay, so far we have some accidents. Many of them. US 21 at Jenkins Brothers Road in Blythewood, Two Notch Road at Sparkleberry Lane, Percival Road near Decker Boulevard, North Main Street at Colonial Drive, Longs Pond Road at Two Notch, Kelly Mill Road between Bookman Road and Bombing Range Road in Elgin, I-26 westbound right before South Carolina 202, that's exit 85. Also, Bar Road at Two Notch, 77 northbound at I-26 exit 1. Come back, more of the postgame show. Talk Jeremiah Donati next. All right, so Jeremiah Donati talking with Jay on Wednesday here on the postgame show about the Nike deal that dropped July 1. One other thing I want to play here from Donati is his thoughts on the untapped potential the Nike deal can help South Carolina with.
Well, I think they'll help us in shoe wear. I think, that's their bread and butter, is that Nike's started as a shoe company, and they've since, morphed into an international conglomerate and sell all sorts of apparel. But I think that's one area that they'll be incredibly helpful with. I think in recruiting, the reality is that, a lot of what we do is appealing to the hearts and minds of 15, 16, and 17-year-olds. And in the recruits that we've spoken to, this Nike news was massive. It's not going to win you a national championship on its own. You've got to go out. You've got to present a total value proposition for what the school can provide, what the coaches can provide, what the opportunities are, and you've got to be extremely competitive in the player compensation game. We know those things. But when you also put that alongside the best apparel company in the world, you got something special, and that to me was really a missing piece. So we, and we think the product is elite. When you think about, just take football for example, the uniforms that the Gamecocks will be wearing next year, those are the same ones they wear in the NFL. The cleats our guys will be wearing are worn by 80 to 85% of players in the NFL. Like that's the stuff that our student athletes deserve. That's the quality that we want them in. And so they're going to be great in all those areas. And like Nike just has a way to make you, to sharpen your brand, to do little things to keep you looking slick and keep you looking, cool and all those things. And so that's important also. So I think our fans will respond to that. It's always, Nike's always been kind of the cool apparel provider. And so to have some of that cool factor is certainly not lost on us.
Cool's a thing. As you get older, you realize, what you thought was cool at 17, 18, 19, 20, you go, man, I really thought that was cool. We've all been there, but at that age, you want stuff that's cool. It matters. It means something. To what level? That depends on each individual, right? But no one ever said, man, I want dorky stuff. Man, I love that. I love those shoes you're wearing. Yeah, they're dorky as hell. Really not a conversation, right? You want to look cool, especially at that age. I think we do as you get older. It's just a different thing, right? But when you're between that age of 17 and 21 or 22, a cool factor, a hip factor matters. And, the Under Armour, go back to the beginning of Under Armour and the Under Armour deal. The feeling was, here comes this, new, young, hip apparel company. Let's jump on board early. And again, just didn't work out the way people had hoped. Nike is Nike. They're always going to have a cool hip factor in some way, shape, or form. And so getting back with Nike kind of re-energizes you in a lot of different ways. And the potential of how you can leverage financially your university with the help of the Nike brand is something you got to look at. What are the different revenue streams you can get out of this? How can you, lift up your profile now that you're a Nike school again? All those things matter. And when you hear Jeremiah Donati talk, you hear just basically what a present-day athletic director is saying. Look, man, we gotta flip every rock over to find money. Basically, college athletics has become this guy, and I don't know if you have this friend. Most people have this friend. The guy that's walking around with the little Geiger counter thing, looking for money, looking for gold. The guy that's when you go to the beach, it's the guy that's looking around for the gold. When I lived in West Virginia, there was a guy who I'll never forget it. His wife was really nice, and she was married to this guy, and he was always looking for money everywhere. One time she worked for a lawyer, and so they're going to the lawyer's house for the law firm's Christmas party, right? And this guy's named Sam. And Sam's wife turns the corner, and Sam is in the living room, the sitting room, the parlor, whatever the hell it was. When you're rich, you got 17 different rooms. And she turns the corner, and he's got a chair, and he's got it flipped upside down. He's shaking it. She's like, Sam, what are you doing? Honey, these people is rich. I know there's money in this chair. Well, that's kind of what college athletics has become. They become Sam. They're shaking chairs, flipping stuff around. They're at the beach looking for the gold amongst the rocks. They got their little Geiger counter out walking around. They're looking for like dollar bills on the sidewalk. That's college athletics, and that's what you have to do today. And the thing I think that I'm impressed with Jeremiah Donati 18 months into this thing is he gets it. And that's why, to the credit of South Carolina, they hired Jeremiah Donati. So far, it just looks like a hell of a hire. All of a sudden, Jeremiah Donati and his staff and his people, along with more folks over at South Carolina who have bought in and jumped on board, all of a sudden, Shane Beamer needs more money. Let's get you more money, Shane. Lamont Paris needs more money. Let's get you more money, Lamont. We got to get a baseball coach. We're already top 10 in operational budget nationally in baseball. We got to give him more money to help Coach Schnall. Look at the staff Schnall has. Jay and I were joking last week. Mark Kingston's like, oh, now. I mean, Kevin Schnall is armed with a true staff. And they just added a couple more pieces to it we'll talk about during the Gamecock Notebook. It's just Jeremiah Donati has gone and got more resources for these sports programs so they can get themselves into consistent winning mode. Now, the flip side of that is you get more money and you're not successful, you end up like Paul Maneri. Lamont Paris is next on the clock. So's Shane. Really, Shane's ahead of Lamont because Shane's next man up, coming off a 4-8. We saw all the portal additions. We saw not losing Dylan Stewart, not losing Lenora Sellers or Nick Harbor or any of the other important pieces that South Carolina wanted to keep. Did you lose Dre Jacobs? Yeah. Did you want to keep him? Sure. But obviously, you kind of take the model of what the NFL does, right player, right price. If the player's abilities on and off the field don't match the price that they want, you have to respectively move on. You just better be correct in your evaluation. You better have somebody to replace them. But Jeremiah Donati gave Shane the resources. He gave Lamont the resources. But now you have to produce, or again, I think Jeremiah Donati will go look for someone else who can produce with the resources that he is giving them and the university is giving them. So you like where it's going. You like, what's being done to Williams-Brice. You need more suites or more expensive seating, boxes, whatever you want to call it. You got to bring those rich folk in who love to make it rain money. That's just where we're at. There's a good and a bad to it, but that's where we're at. You heard Jeremiah Donati drop some hints about CLA. That wasn't an accident. Jeremiah didn't have, too many craft beers and started, slippery lips and just started yapping. Like my Uncle Laney at the family reunion. No, that trial balloon was shot up for a reason. CLA's 20 years old. Jeremiah Donati says, it's about the time you got to do something. Either you go out and you get, I guess, two plans. One is, okay, what's the cost? What would it look like to renovate CLA? What's the cost? What would it look like to build a new arena? And where? But that's what you want to hear from the athletic director, because he's looking at evolving and progress and how do we get, our resources are shinier and newer. What can we do to improve the product to attract better players, to make the fan experience better so they spend more money because we need money. Because remember, we're like that guy Sam. We're flipping over chairs trying to find change. I like what I've seen from Jeremiah Donati in 18 months. I really do. And, again, the logos on the fields, for some people it drives them crazy, but that's a world we live in. You've got to leverage everything. You've got to NASCAR as much as you can to make as much money as possible to put together a winning product. I like what I've seen so far in 18 months. Feel free to disagree. It's okay. AAA Heating and Air Hotline. Firehouse Subtext line 803-404-6100. Our at radio, at the Game TV radio chat box. Wherever you want to comment, feel free. All right, Jay's not here. Terry Ford and a World Cup update. It's going to be interesting. That is next here on the post-game show. Appreciate you hanging out with us like always and putting up with our yipping. We go till 6 here on the Game Network, at the Game TV radio on YouTube. Yeah, I did the British Bulldog pub, was it 2 weeks ago now? Or a week from this past Saturday. Did the bangers and mash. Jay said get the yellow mashed potatoes, or the mustard mashed potatoes, yellow, like they were colored. Can you give me them yellow ones, please? The mustard mashed potatoes, the bangers and mash, it was phenomenal. So what I got was great. Food is good. You got a ton of screens to watch soccer. If you're into World Cup, British Bulldogs the place to be, maybe even tonight for USA Belgium. Again, a lot of controversy. We've talked about it on and off on this show today. A lot of controversy involving the United States. Flo Belugan suspended. His red card has been suspended. Belugan will play tonight for the United States against Belgium. FIFA has ruled a request from Belgium inadmissible, meaning there are no grounds for an appeal. There's been talk that the President of the United States personally reached out to FIFA to take a look at that play. The Belugan got the red card. Most of the reaction around the world has been negative toward FIFA. And like we talked about in the 3 o'clock hour, when controversy goes your way, you're all for it. Whether it's, hey, that red card was crap, it should have never been hoisted in the first place. It's just, it's getting reversed. The wrong was righted. Or you say this, hey, I don't care if it's right or wrong. It benefits us. Who cares? Or you do this one. We've been screwed over so many times. It's about time we got one over on somebody. If you're Belgium, you're mad. And I understand that side too. Wait a minute, this is unprecedented. In the knockout round, really? Wow, FIFA, you don't look corrupt at all. Bad door you're opening here. I mean, all these things, again, just depends on who you're rooting for, which dog you have in the fight. But that's United States and Belgium tonight. If the U.S. wins, it's as far as they've been in the World Cup in over 2 decades. Belgium, of course, knocked out the U.S. in 2014. U.S., younger legs, more athletic. Belgium, a little bit of age, but obviously still have some skilled players. They're just older. Some of the key components of Belgium's team was also on the squad in 2014, 12 years ago, when they beat the United States and knocked them out of the World Cup. So tonight will be interesting. Obviously, having Belugan helps the United States' chances greatly. It's looked at as a pick'em game. We'll talk more about it here in a little bit. Spain and Portugal, 0-0. Right now, I think it was 90th minute. Again, Ronaldo, it's his last World Cup. He said it. Spain with some young talent. A lot of folks think Spain will be France's biggest obstacle in the French winning the World Cup this year. So we'll see if Spain can get past Portugal. Portugal's very talented. There are people who think Portugal is not playing to the level of their talent. So this one's interesting today. Right now, 0-0, Portugal and Spain. Of course, the winner will move on into the Elite Eight as well. And then last night, we saw England gut it out against Mexico. They move on. Norway, for the first time ever, they go to the Elite Eight for the quarters with their win over Brazil. Brazil, they're not what they used to be, obviously. But Norway, with our guy Holland, who everybody seems to love Holland. The Norway striker who's got, 7 goals? I think I saw this stat on SportsCenter last night. Coming into this World Cup, Norway in their history had scored 7 goals. Holland on his own this year has scored 7 goals. And the dude's just fearless going to the net. He's big, he's athletic. And when he goes to the net, he goes to the net. So Norway moves on, and we will see what happens, first of all, with Portugal and Spain. That's happening right now, and then the U.S. and Belgium later on today. There's your World Cup update. Sponsor our buds at British Bulldog again tonight. Head on over. Watch the U.S., grab some food, lots of great beverage choices as well at the British Bulldog. Should be good times. Hopefully the U.S. wins. They move on into the quarters. We shall see. All right, 5 o'clock news coming up. Get you caught up with all the headlines in the world of sports. A couple things we haven't gotten to yet we will jump into as well, including an ex-NCAA hoops player indicted in a $2.2 million scheme. It's coming up next on the 5 o'clock news, sponsored by Buds Integrated Media here on the postgame show on The Game Network, at The Game TV Radio on YouTube. All right, our check of the traffic at 5. Accident still getting cleaned up. US 21 at Jenkins Brothers Road. Also Percival Road near Decker Boulevard, Longs Pond Road at 2 Notch. New accidents, Bar Road at 2 Notch, I-77 northbound at I-26 exit 1. Sunset Boulevard at North Lake Drive, West Killian at Farrow Road, I should say. And our typical issues at Malfunction Junction and long-term construction. We will, in the Gamecock Notebook, talk more about the recruiting haul the last 4 days by South Carolina football. Also, Preston Thorne on the early game had a very interesting take on the verbal commitments of in-state players here in South Carolina. We're going to play that for you. Also during the Gamecock Notebook. But yeah, a multitude of players. Davion Jones, Nate Carson, Jaden Brody. Obviously, the five-star Dobson started the whole thing a few days ago. And we'll talk more about that. We'll hear their announcements as well during the Gamecock Notebook. Also, we'll discuss a baseball transfer portal get over the last weekend that was big for new coach Kevin Schnall here at South Carolina. 5 o'clock news as we switch over to some other headlines. Former Kentucky basketball player Kerr Krissa has been arrested and indicted on a $2.2 million fraud scheme. Krissa, 6'3" guard from Estonia, played for Kentucky, Arizona, West Virginia, and Cincinnati over 6 seasons. Allegedly carried out a scheme to obtain nearly $2.2 million from multiple victims using false representation, fabricated identities, and deceptive communications. That's what the Department of Justice says. Krissa played at Cincinnati last year, suffered a separated shoulder in February, missed the rest of the season. Now, according to the DOJ, Krissa allegedly ran a 4-year scheme that involved convincing one victim to send him money by saying his mother had cancer and needed treatment. Well, this is a high-quality individual. By posing as his mother in another scheme, he allegedly told one victim he needed money to save the family farm. He also allegedly acted as a woman named Irene to sign a fraudulent promise to repay one of the victims $100,000 by a February deadline. Quote from U.S. Attorney Matthew L. Harvey, "Financial fraud schemes erode trust, cause real harm to victims who believe they were helping someone in need. Our office will continue to pursue individuals who exploit others through deception. We are committed to holding them accountable for their actions." The government is seeking forfeiture of any proceeds traceable to the alleged offenses, including a money judgment of approximately $2.2 million against Krissa. Krissa dealt with multiple injuries over his career and completed just 127 games over 6 seasons. His arrest is the latest in the sport by the Department of Justice, who has indicted multiple college basketball players and coaches in gambling and bribery schemes over the past decade. Wow. So this guy not only squeezed money out of folks saying that his mom had cancer and needed treatment, then he pretended to be his mom in another scheme, saying he needed money to, quote-unquote, save the family farm. Then he was a woman named Irene to make money. Wow. 5 o'clock news sponsored by Integrated Media here on the game. Terry Ford, appreciate you hanging. Giannis Antetokounmpo, his trade became official on Monday, today. Giannis released a video on his social media account on Monday featuring a sit-down interview with longtime Bucks play-by-play announcer Jim Paschke. Giannis said goodbye to Milwaukee and expressed his love for the city. Look, Giannis, I'll say this about Giannis. The Greek Freak could have left multiple times, but he stayed in Milwaukee. He wanted to win a championship. He really dug into the community. And for a long time, for me, just as a long-time NBA nerd, after watching high-profile player after high-profile player leave smaller markets for bigger markets, and whether it's more money, more shine, more notoriety, build your brand, whatever, yada, yada, yada. It was really refreshing to see Giannis hunker down in Milwaukee. And to see the Bucks win a championship, I thought was cool. Nothing against the Suns. And look, I'm a huge Chris Paul fan too. But seeing Giannis win a championship, kind of like that, man, you fought the good fight, and the basketball gods are going to repay you in the city of Milwaukee with a championship. Since then, things went sideways. Giannis became a GM. The Bucks decided they wanted to go star hunting. They screwed up their team by bringing in Damian Lillard, who couldn't spell championship if you gave him all the words except the P. And the thing just went sideways. And last year, Giannis checked out, which I don't agree with and I think was awful, and it's something he needs to answer to. And the whole thing fell apart. So now Giannis, in his early 30s, will go to Miami, see if he can stay healthy, and see if he can help Miami make a run in the East, which depends on guard play and Giannis's health. Just saying. But I give Giannis a lot of credit for what he did in Milwaukee. I do. And I think he's sincere when he talks about his love for the city. If he didn't love Milwaukee, he'd have left. Because I'll give you a little secret. Not the greatest weather. I lived in Wisconsin for 2 years. So Giannis, a video kind of like goodbye to the city of Milwaukee today as he moves on to Miami. 5 o'clock news sponsored by Integrated Media. Again, today, another story, you just shake your head. Bucknell University is in central Pennsylvania in a city called Lewisburg. Well, a former Bucknell strength and conditioning coach was charged Monday with felony aggravated hazing following the 2024 death of a freshman football player who collapsed during his first workout with the team. Mike Kulbis is also charged with misdemeanor counts of involuntary manslaughter, reckless endangerment, and hazing in the death of 18-year-old Calvin C.J. Dickey Jr. Quote, while the death of Calvin Dickey is tragic, Mark Kulbis did not contribute to it and is not responsible for it. That's what his attorney says. I know, shocking. There are facts and other circumstances surrounding this matter that, once presented at the appropriate time, will demonstrate that Mr. Kulbis did not commit the crimes he is charged with. Quote from Bucknell. Bucknell has cooperated with the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office throughout this investigation. Because this is now an active criminal matter and related civil litigation remains pending, the university will not comment. Again, shocking. Dickey died July 12, 2024, 2 days after he collapsed at a team workout. He was 18 years old. Dickey collapsed from sickle cell-related issues, a medical condition experts say that's easily prevented, even reversed by stopping the exercise. Kulbis subjected Dickey and other players to 100 up and downs and several full-body plank drills, in spite of training and direction from other coaches that such exercises were not appropriate or safe for use as part of training. According to the Attorney General's statement, Dickey was visibly struggling. Kulbis would not summon help until Dickey passed out. Dickey's parents sued Bucknell in 2025, saying the university knew about their son's sickle cell trait diagnosis and cleared him to play but failed to protect him. Again, man, look, I get you want to get guys in shape. I get the strength and conditioning guy is always kind of like, I shouldn't say always, but in a lot of cases is a borderline wacko. A lot of them are beloved and loved by players and coaches, and some are hated. Some go way over the top. But the idea that this young dude, and we'll, again, you got to wait for a court trial to play itself out. But if this is true, again, people have to pay for it. You got to know if a guy's got issues, you got to know when to let up. I saw this happen at the University of Maryland and a player died. You got to know when to say when. There's a time to take your foot off the gas. Again, this is not 1974. Back then, you get no water during a workout even though it's 110 degrees. Suck it up. Drink your spit. You know, we've evolved from those days. If you have an athlete with a special issue, you got to understand when to stop. If this did happen the way that it's being described by some, a lot of people need to pay the price for it. 5 o'clock news sponsored by Integrated Media. Terry Ford, appreciate you hanging out with us as we just roll up until 6 here on the game. One other college football note. 5-star wide receiver Xavier Sabb, number 20 overall player in ESPN's 300, has committed to Oregon. Jersey kid. Number 5 ranked wide receiver in the class. Visited Bama, LSU, Oregon, Tennessee, UCLA. Sabb told ESPN he had a long-standing connection with Dan Lanning, the head coach at Oregon, and the wide receivers coach Ross Douglas. Everything was reinforced during his final visit with the program last month. So there you go. Oregon also in the last few days got another pledge from a 5-star corner, Hayden Stepp. And again, Stepp and Oregon beat out Alabama and Cal. Alabama losing twice here. Alabama struggled so far this year in Cruton and the transfer portal. Still a lot of talent in Tuscaloosa, and there's a long way to go in the recruiting battles. Obviously, South Carolina went from, 50th to 25th in a matter of a couple weeks. But yes, the spotlight's hot on the coach's office at Bama for Kalen DeBoer. Absolutely. All right, Gamecock Notebook. We'll come back. Davion Jones, Nate Carson, Jaden Brody all committed to South Carolina in the last couple days, as did Mr. Dobson, the 5-star corner. We'll play you 3 of those commits coming up next. And Preston Thorne had a very interesting angle on the early game this morning about local recruits who verbal, and is it harder or easier to flip them? We'll get into all that next, plus baseball adding a big-time player through the transfer portal. All that's next on the Gamecock Notebook. Terry Ford, appreciate you hanging out with us here on the Game Network, at the Game TV Radio and YouTube. All right, checking the Gamecock notebook. Big last few days for South Carolina football, obviously. The commits, they were flowing. After a rough patch for a while where South Carolina seemed to be finishing second in some of these big recruits, Gamecocks hit a 5-star, 2 definite 4-stars, and 1 borderline 3-4-star. Let's start off with Davion Jones, the corner, committing to South Carolina.
Well, first of all, great to be with you.
Oh, that's the wrong one. This is the right one.
The next 3 years, when 3 and out, I'm taking my talents too.
Davion Jones, not the 6'2", 6'3" type of corner with long arms that Coach Gray likes, but still, Jones, about 5'11"-ish. Speed, a lot of ability, high ceiling. To go with Dobson, you got a 5-star corner and a 4-star corner, or DB. Then, next up, Nate Carson, committing to South Carolina.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be going to University of South Carolina.
There's some happiness. Might not be the mocktail bar like Dobson had, but still, the young fellow from Irmo, 4-star offensive tackle, ending up at South Carolina. And again, typically, we saw Josiah Thompson do it. We saw Shed Surratt do it. In a perfect world, though, your freshman offensive tackles are, unless they are truly gifted, in a perfect world, they get to sit a year and figure it out, right? So 4-star Nate Carson coming to South Carolina. Jaden Brody, a borderline 3 or 4-star, depending on what service you're looking at edge, undersized guy right now, but he'll get to South Carolina, hit the weight room, hit the nutrition room, throw on some LBs of muscle, and we'll see where he ends up. Right now, a little bit, about 6, was it 6'4", about 230, roughly. But here's Brody making his commitment.
And then lastly, I want to thank all my friends and my family for coming out here supporting me. And without y'all, I don't know where I'd be today. And God, I do this today. This is my comedy. For 4 years, I've been taking my talents to University of South Carolina.
Another player taking their talents to South Carolina. And LeBron thing just keeps living, doesn't it? Taking my talents to South Beach. Man, it's been a long time, too. 20 years, roughly. 2010 or 11 or whatever it was. No, maybe, 16 years maybe. But anyway. Again, an undersized edge right now. So a guy that, again, you just want to beef up a bit. Hit the weight room. Hit the buffet. And get a little weight on him. A little bit more muscle. See where a player like Brody ends up before it's all said and done. Now, 3 of the 4 who committed are locals. Preston Thorne had a very interesting take on when local guys verbally commit, because, again, you're verbaling. You can always get flipped. That's the world we live in. It's only a verbal. But here's Preston with his thoughts on local players who verbal, and it might be tougher for them to flip.
Here's a little asterisk that I think you make sure that you have to point out. This may temper some of the fears about losing the commit. All 3 of these players are in-state recruits. And when you're an in-state recruit and you commit to an in-state university, it makes it a lot more difficult to flip.
Yes.
Because we know you, and you got to go to Publix, and you have to go to Kroger, and I might see you at Rush's. And so all of the Go Gamecocks that you've been getting, all of the Spurs up that you're seeing on the street, everybody's all in your DMs celebrating you. It's all good right now. Now, if you flip, it better be worth it. It better be worth it.
Everybody's got a number.
And I have no problem if you do that, but just understand that if you do decide to flip once you make a commitment, because everybody understands as an in-state recruit, you can make whatever choice you want to make. All rational people. And I'm not talking for the irrational. I'm just talking for the regular college football fan. Hey, you're from South Carolina. You're not obliged to play for South Carolina. But once you commit and you've said that this is what you want to do and you've gone through the journey and you talk about the relationship and all that stuff, now it's going to be very difficult. So I say the chances of holding on to an in-state recruit are a lot higher.
I thought that was very interesting from Preston. You grew up here. Everybody sees you at rushes. You see you at different places. And you're getting pat on the back and the attaboys and all that. But then that peer pressure thing, I can't really flip. I can't do that. I grew up here. My God. My life will be a living hell. I don't want to go through all that. That is a thing at that age. It really is. Let's just be honest. So, very interesting. Very interesting. Preston's take on that. All right, and I don't disagree with it. Because there's something about, going to the hometown school or the home state school and all that love you do get. And then if you flip and go somewhere else, you kind of turns your back on the home state school. And there is a little peer pressure to something like that. Not to say you won't do it, but there's a little something extra to it. All right, South Carolina, they get Connor Schaus out of the transfer portal. Coach Schnall and the Gamecocks baseball program. Nice work in the portal since Schnall got here. Schaus, numbers really nice. He pitched and played in the field in a variety of spots. 54 games as a position player, 11 appearances on the mound. As a hitter, 353, 10 homers, 66 RBIs, 52 runs scored, 30 extra base hits, 6 for 6 in steals. As a pitcher, a mixed bag. ERA was near 6. Struck out basically a hitter an inning. Opponents, they batted .245 against Schaus. Really, if you look at the numbers, his wheelhouse is as a position player. And 6'4 Analytics, their rankings have Schaus as the number one player in the transfer portal. And again, Schaus from Texas Tech, also played previously at Georgia Tech. So that was a good get a few days ago. And finally, Kevin Schnall updating the coaching staff with a former MLB scout. Kevin Schnall grabs a couple of guys. Dan Valerio as USC's assistant recruiting coordinator and field coordinator. That's official. Kyle Lindquist has also been added as defensive coordinator, infield coach. He's defensive coordinator in baseball now. Valerio, again, I feel really bad for Wake. That the players and now the coaching staff continues to get poached. Valerio was part of Wake Forest coaching staff, was hitting coach, associate, head coach, or he served with Gamecocks' new hitting coach, associate head coach, Bill Salento. He was a recruiting director in Winston-Salem, was Kyle Lindquist. So a couple more coaches added to a big staff that Kevin Schnall has here at Carolina. All right, here's Gamecock Notebook. We'll come back. We're going to re-rack the Phil Steele conversation this morning on the early game with Elijah and Preston and Jalen. Again, Phil Steele opening up his radio tour of the country here in Columbia, South Carolina this morning. We're going to get to that next, re-rack that in case you missed it earlier here on the game. All right, again, just to remind you, we are doing the Crescent Construction Grand Slam baseball coach hire in honor of Kevin Schnall being the new head man for Carolina baseball. Just go to 1075thegame.com, click on the Crescent Construction Grand Slam giveaway. Just register to win there. We'll do the drawing Friday the 17th, I believe. The Friday before SEC Media Days. It's sponsored by our buds at Crescent Construction and the folks here, us, at the game. We talk about CHW cabinetry all the time. We talk about the wonderful, fantastic customer service, the transparency of photorealistic renderings. Because again, look, the world we live in is filled with bait and switches, filled with phony promises, filled with, yeah, we were going to do it for that price, but transparency, honesty, being there for you. I know those things sound hokey, but they matter. They just do. And that's what Star and her crew at CHW Cabinetry specialize in, that and fine quality work inside or outside. Call 803-520-6837. Again, 803-520-6837. Go with the quality and the great customer service of the folks at CHW Cabinetry. Alrighty, investigating the traffic. Got some new ones. Clemson Road at Farrow Road, Garner's Ferry near Pineview Road, Hard Scrabble at Magnolia Hall, Lake Murray Boulevard at I-26, Nazareth Road at South Lake Drive as well. Then we have Malfunction Junction, malfunctioning like always, some long-term construction in the usual spots. Had a little rain earlier, cool things off, but it's hot. We'll get back with the SEC Notebook next. Oh, time for our drive around the SEC here on the post-game show. Terry Ford, appreciate you hanging out with us today as we roll this baby till 6. Whether you're here in Columbia, 107.5 The Game, you're in Myrtle Beach, Charleston, Florence, we greatly appreciate you hanging out with us, like always. We do. All right, so earlier, Preston, Elijah, Jalen on the early game, Jalen filling in for Jen, had Phil Steele, the Phil Steele College Football Yearbook, the Bible for college football in 2026. Phil started his nationwide radio tour by hanging out with our crew this morning. And let's re-rack that for you. And Elijah Campbell starting off the conversation with Phil Steele.
The man himself, Phil Steele, the one and only, joins us right now. Phil, appreciate you kicking off your radio tour here with us. It's always great to hear from you. Like I mentioned earlier, I got my copy, been flipping through it already. Still, there's so much in here that I have a lot more I need to dig into, but appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us this morning.
Hey, and you guys are number one this season. You're the first show that we're doing. We always wait till the magazine's officially on sale at Barnes & Noble, and so you guys are officially kicking off the radio season for me.
Let's go.
It is a badge of honor. This is great. Phil Steele's first radio appearance right here in beautiful Columbia, South Carolina, and that's where we're going to start, Phil. We'll start here with the South Carolina Gamecock team. Coming off a 4-8 season, I think the discourse around this team is, I know, it's much different here in July of 26 than it was July of 25. But when you look at maybe some of the failures of last year with what happened in the offseason with South Carolina, what should give Carolina fans maybe the most hope and enthusiasm that things can be turned around despite playing in a league like this?
Yeah, and this year I am bullish on South Carolina. I've put them on my most improved list. 2 years ago, South Carolina was coming off a 5-7 season. I put them on my most improved list. They got to 9-4. Now, last year, South Carolina fans weren't too happy for me, or with me, I should say. I picked them low. They were considered a national title playoff contender, and I had them 10th in the SEC. But a lot of that was due to the defense. And, I thought they lost too much from the defensive front seven last year. And even with that, you go back to the Alabama game. They led that thing 22-14, 10 minutes to go. They had a shot to win that. A&M up 30-3 at the half. Sorry to open up some wounds there, guys. But I think they're going to be improved, especially at that linebacker position. That's probably one of the more experienced units, probably the strength of the team this year. And then offensively, you got Lenore Sellers back. Remember, he got injured against Vanderbilt. Took a few games to get back. I think he's going to have the type of year more towards what he was playing at the end of 2024. And then let's look at the offensive line as well. Back in 24, they didn't have any injuries on the offensive line. They had one start missed all year. Last year, the injuries cropped up. They fired their OL coach mid-year. They dropped to 111 yards per game rush, allowed 43 sacks. I think if you look at the offensive line this year, they added 7 offensive linemen that were full-time starters. And really, when you add transfers, you want to add guys with experience. So I'm looking for a stock market bounce from that offensive line, a more improved run game, Lenore Sellers back to form, and a defense which was decent last year, but I think they're going to be better this year, especially at the linebacker core, the strength of the team. So add it all up, I'm much more bullish on South Carolina this year than I was last year.
Phil Steele's on with us right now from the Phil Steele College Football Preview. You can get it at Barnes & Noble. You can order it online. I went to Barnes & Noble on Garner's Ferry yesterday and picked up mine. Recommend you do the same thing. And Phil, you mentioned the offensive line. That's really kind of dominated a lot of the discussion we've had here in the offseason is what is this offensive line going to be? Can it be acceptable enough for Kendall Briles' offense to be able to hum? But my question for you here is, when you've studied these rosters, and we're so far into the transfer portal era now that you have seen a lot of offensive lines that have been built through the transfer portal, is there any good historical precedent that I think that you've maybe noticed over the years where a team does build an offensive line strictly through the portal and is able to immediately have a bounce back year from one year to the next?
Well, you have to factor in different things when you're looking for a bounce back year. And as mentioned, you go back to last year, there was plenty of injuries on the offensive line and then firing the offensive line coach mid-year. So generally, you're going to see improvement. Now, I can tell you, being on the Joe Moore Award, the Joe Moore guys feel that the offensive line play overall in college football is down because of the transfer portal. There's not as much cohesion on the offensive line. It's tough to build. But when you look at South Carolina, the things I like is the fact that they brought in experienced guys who have started, and then you have those extended practices now where you can practice a little more over the fall to get together, cohesion, and then of course you've got all of August to get together. So I think we're going to see enough players come in where there's definitely going to be improvement on the offensive line, especially after what happened last year.
Phil, one of my favorite things about what you do, too, is your specific metrics, right? Try to find out, what makes good luck, like turnover differential and things of that nature, to try to find maybe the bounce-back teams in college football. I think one thing for South Carolina that Gamecock fans, maybe your more optimistic ones, kind of hang their hat on, is the fact that you did lose a lot of close games last year. Like you mentioned the Texas A&M loss. You had a 27-point lead at halftime. You mentioned the Alabama loss. You had a lead in the fourth quarter. We saw a lot of one-score or very tight losses where you're going into the fourth quarter and it's a hotly contested game. You just couldn't pull it through. But what do you think is maybe the most important thing for a team like South Carolina to have that kind of bad close game luck get reversed just from one year to the next?
Yeah, and the metric articles I started in the magazine back in 1995, the first one was turnovers equals turnaround, which was double-digit turnovers. If you benefit from them one year, you're going to go weaker record the next year, and vice versa if you had negative double-digit turnovers. And so after that, a few years later, I started the close wins, close losses one, and it really is true to form. And if you take a look at those games, if you lose a game by, a point or 3 points or anything less than a touchdown, you're looking at the fact that you're basically one play away from actually winning the game as opposed to losing the game. So you're much better than your record, and it generally shows. So I did all the metrics and have been doing it for years, and once again, it comes up about 75%. If you lose a lot of close games one year, the next year you get that improvement. Of course, keeping Lenore Sellers healthy is a big plus, keeping the offensive line healthy, and I think if the offensive line's healthy at the end of the year, that helps you win those games. It helps you run the football at the end of the game, control the clock if you're ahead late in the game. Also, in the red zone, it helps you out. So I think the improvement for South Carolina in the offensive line, linebacking core, and quarterback are probably the three main areas that will help you win those close games.
Phil Steele's on with us right now. And Phil, in your position rankings, I saw South Carolina, especially at wide receiver, top 15. You mentioned the linebacking group being maybe the best on this team right now, maybe in terms of depth and the talent they have coming back. But what's maybe the one of the most intrigue to you that you think might actually end up making or breaking this season?
I would have to say, well, really, when you look at the team, to me, the offensive line is going to be the key to whether or not, if they show the improvement I expect, that to me is going to be the key to this season. But another one to look at is probably a little bit the defensive line. I like the talent there. Dylan Stewart, you lose 3 starters, but I like the overall talent that they brought in to replace them. Brownlow Dindy at the defensive tackle spot, I think he is powerful. He is 311 pounds in the middle. That's going to be a nice force to have. And, Coach Beamer told me this group reminds him a lot of 2024's group with 6 defensive tackles that can play in good depth at defensive end. So I think if the defensive end line can be anywhere near as dominant as it was in 2024 and the offensive line pulls together, those are probably going to be the keys.
Phil, when it comes to surprise teams, in the Southeastern Conference, who do you think may be the biggest spoiler that people just, I guess, national media types maybe haven't really tapped into just yet?
Well, my number one surprise team this year is Alabama. That's because they're sort of being discounted coming into the season. So it didn't sound like your question was looking for a team like that, though. I'm going to say, how about Tennessee? I think when you look at Tennessee this year, the big question for me might be on the defensive side of the ball. They're bringing in a new defense coordinator in Jim Knowles. The one thing I've noticed about Jim Knowles, usually it takes 2 years for his defense to come together. But if he can get that defense to come together and be improved, they got more talent this year than they did last year. And if they get good quarterbacks, quarterback play. And I know you look at last year and you say, well, you have to have a returning veteran starter, right? Well, guess what? Ohio State did pretty well with the first-year starter. Notre Dame did pretty well with the first-year young starter. So if Tennessee can get that production, and Josh Heupel usually does, they've got a schedule that could possibly get there. You look at they face just one upper half team on the road, Texas A&M. They've got 5 SEC home games this year. Good surrounding talent for that young quarterback, and the young quarterback may surprise this year.
Phil, thank you for telling us all the information we needed to know about our local Gamecock team, but there's one other team within the state, which we will not name, that we need to know some information about. They wear purple pants. Can you give us what we need to know about those folks in the upstate?
Yeah, I think when you look at I can say the name, you guys can't, but it's when you look at Clemson this year, I think first of all they've got to play better at home. Last year they were 3-4 at home. That's just unacceptable. It was their first losing season at home in forever. I think they're going to actually get quarterback play up to last year's standards, because last year a lot was expected out of Cade Klubnik. Didn't really happen, but I think Vizina or Tate Reynolds could step in and do a good job. I like what they've got a receiver with TJ Moore and Wesco. They were banged up a receiver again last year. The defense looks solid. I like Sammy Brown. And really, when you look at their schedule this year, the games I've got them an underdog in, you look at LSU. They're a slight underdog there, and then home against Miami. But the rest of the schedule is actually very, very set up well. Their road games are Syracuse, Florida State's a winnable one, Cal's a winnable one, Duke's a winnable one. If they can get that home edge back, and they play one of the better schedules in the ACC this year, then I think Clemson's actually going to be a contender in the ACC. I know you guys didn't want to hear that.
We appreciate knowing that going into the season, though.
Yeah, or at least as long as they're not contending in the last week in November, then folks around here would be pretty thrilled with that. Maybe it makes beating them a little sweeter if they are really good. Two different ways that you can look at that right there. Phil Steele's on with us right now. And Phil, in terms of last year, there were a lot of disappointments. Clemson being one of those disappointments. Penn State being one of those too. Was there a team this year that is going to be maybe viewed as a consensus top 10 team that you're just not biting on this year?
The one that I'm probably looking at might be LSU, and I think LSU probably comes into the season possibly in the top 10, but they have a rugged schedule. They are practically a new team, and I did a new thing in the magazine this year. It's called the Homegrown Factor, which talks about teams that recruit freshmen, and then they stay through all the way through. Alabama, Georgia are two of the teams at the top of the SEC. This LSU team is almost completely rebuilt. They have very little coming back from last year. They've got 2 offensive linemen. They've got Whit Weeks coming back at linebacker, and a couple of good cornerbacks in P.J. Woodland and Tamari Cooley. But I don't think they're going to be top 10 level. I think when you look at the schedule this year, they play at Ole Miss, where I've got them a dog. The Texas A&M game to me is a toss-up. The Clemson game could be a toss-up early. They have to play at Auburn. They host Alabama, and Alabama handled them last year again. They host Texas. That's going to be a rough one. Texas, I think, with Arch Manning is much improved at the end of the year. That Tennessee team that we talked about. So there's the potential for this LSU team to lose 4 or 5 games this year. I don't think they'll be a top 10 team coming in at the end of the year, but I do think they might be a top 10 team at the start of the year in the AP poll.
I'm here for the storyline. If they lose to Ole Miss at Ole Miss, I'm here for the chaos that may ensue. Last thing for you here, Phil. One thing I love about your magazine, too, is how much interaction you get with these coaches. And, of course, all coaches are optimistic going into the season. But in your years of doing this, have you ever actually had a coach that was like, hey, man, between you and me, this is gonna be bad. This isn't going to be a lot of fun.
Here's the best one that I had, and it would be Bowling Green. Their head coach, Scott Locklear, said the first time I talked to him, he goes, okay, here's the story, Phil. It's a 5-year plan. This first year, we're going to suck. The second year, we're going to suck less. The third year, we're going to be okay. The fourth year, we'll start to be competitive, and the fifth year, we'll get ourselves to a bowl game. And he just laid it right out, and that's exactly what happened at Bowling.
There's Phil Steele talking with our early game crew. We'll come back, take a look at the schedule, pick some games next as we wrap up the post-game show on the game. Okay, it's Jay's not here, obviously. Be back on Monday. But the internet never goes away. The internet doesn't go to the beach. Right now, Spain leading Portugal 1-0. Marino delivers a late goal as Spain knocks out Ronaldo and Portugal. Ronaldo's last World Cup, remember he announced that. So Spain will move on in the World Cup. Obviously, the United States and Belgium tonight. That game will kick at 8 p.m. We've talked about the controversy of what's going on with the U.S. and Flo Belugan will be playing. Obviously, that helps the United States and obviously frustrates Belgium. That's 8 p.m. I think the United States will win. I don't know how much this whole thing's in Belgium's head. That's the wild card. Is it positive motivation? Is it something that because it happened at such a late time to get prepared, does that hurt? The U.S., I think, is just younger. They play a different style. Obviously, in the last time Belgium played them years and years and years ago. I feel like the United States gets through, and then, of course, it ends against Argentina. I think the United States will get through. Farthest trip in the World Cup since 2002. It's a pick-em. It's a toss-up. Maybe I'm just being patriotic. I don't know, but I'll take the United States. And again, Spain has moved on. Portugal is out 1-0. Spain over Portugal. As we look at the internet tonight, Major League Baseball. This isn't so much a snub. This isn't so much about tonight's games. The All-Star rosters came out. And they talked about snubs and things of that nature. The American League, this might be the weakest American League team I've seen in a long time. American League is just, look, if your favorite team is in the American League, you just need to have your squad go on a heater, and all of a sudden they're in the playoff picture. The American League has one team. One team. That's it. Playing over 600 baseball. Well, I should say just under a tick now. The Tampa Rays are at 598. No one else is playing 600 baseball in the American League. Matter of fact, we'll see 1, 2, 3, 4. Only 6 teams in the American League are over 500. It's just been a bad season in the AL. Thanks for hanging out, putting up with us, whether you listening the normal way in one of our different affiliates or on YouTube. Thank you. We'll talk tomorrow.